Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Magicians Without Borders Conversations. Welcome, New Year, and we are starting this. So, hello to everyone that's joining. Hey, Jason, ¿cómo estás? Un abrazo hasta Bogotá, hasta Paraíso. So, welcome, everyone. We are on episode 20 of our Magicians Without Borders Conversations. And, we're very excited to start the year with a, with this episode. I just want to make sure that you're listening to me. Tom and Chris, if you're listening to me, just give me thumbs up. If you're listening to me, awesome. Yes. So let's try and do this because I want to remind you guys that we got a store. So if you go to store.magicianswithoutborders.com, you can get our magic at home services. Those are performances. So if you want or you have a party planned or you want to entertain a remote activity or an online event, you can definitely have magicians from Magicians Without Borders at that event. And we are virtual, so we can help you out with that. It's an awesome thing. We do it for birthday parties, for meetings, or for corporate events. And that also can also be a workshop. So we had workshops with kids, with adults, and within corporate events, and that's very fun, very entertaining, and very engaging. And also, you can get our magic course called Become a Magician, a self-paced magic course that you can take online at your own pace, and it's wonderful. You can actually do a 30-minute magic show yourself when you are done with our magic course. And before we begin, I just wanted to say that we are introducing something that we call a mailbag episode. That means that the last Wednesday of the month, so remember, we are here every Wednesday. So the last Wednesday of the month, we're going to do a mailbag episode, meaning that if you send us your questions at a email, for example, magicianswithoutborders.com. So you send your emails to podcast@magicianswithoutborders.com. We will answer your questions on the last Wednesday of the month. So send us your comments and questions so that we can have that mailbag episode answering any and all of your questions and comments about our subjects. You can also suggest topics that we would talk about or that you want us to talk about in this podcast. So remember, podcast@magicianswithoutborders.com. Send your questions and your comments in. And you can also do it on our Twitter on our Twitter handle @magicianswb. So that's our new Twitter handle. We had another one, but this is the one we're using now. So if you guys want to go to Twitter, please search magicianswb, and that's our new Twitter account. You can send your comments and questions there also as well. So, as always, I'm joined by Tom. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm good. My lighting is a little spooky tonight. I can't explain it, but here I am. Okay.
That's fine. That's
You
fine.
look a little spooky also, Carlos. Looks great. Okay.
I'm trying to get this. You know how the new kids do it. This streamer vibe of the lights. That's different color in the background and a ring light over here somewhere. Trying to get that vibe on. Tom, so new year. Happy New Year. How was the new year for you?
The new year was really wonderful. We had a quiet evening with our granddaughter, and we made some wonderful food together, and it was terrific. It was great. And I wanted to mention something about the mailbag. One of the things that you might send in is any experiences that you've had where you've done magic that you might call social magic, magic where you were doing it for people, maybe in a hospital or in other places, because we really want to start becoming the place where magic with a social meaning becomes a place where people can come and share that. So I just wanted to mention that if any of our people out there listening have had those experiences, please let us know about them.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So, hey, Maria Regina Hernandez just joined us. So, hi, how are you? And yes, that's the thing. Our hopes is that we can hear from you and learn from you as well. We would love to have more guests that do any social magic anywhere in the world. We would love to have you here. And as Tom said, become the place for you to share those stories and those learnings, which we think are very inspiring and very important. So remember, our first mailbag episode is going to be January 27th, the last Wednesday of the month. Actually, this month has 4 Wednesdays, so the last Wednesday of January is going to be our mailbag episode. So send your comments and questions at podcast.magicianswithoutborders.com or at Twitter at magicianswb. So, Tom, today we have a great guest.
We have a wonderful guest.
Yes. Anything you want to share about him before we introduce him, or do you have any comments about the importance of adding other disciplines or other performers to what we do, to what Magicians Without Borders usually does on their performances?
Well, our guest tonight is a truly marvelous mime. He's I don't use this word very often, but he's a true professional. Like and that word originally, profession, was a religious word. It was monks took a vow during a ceremony called profession. And they took their life very seriously, and they took vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, things like that. I just feel Chris Yerlig, our marvelous guest tonight, he's a professional in the deepest sense of the word, not like we use the word professional these days, but he takes his life as a mime, as a performer, very, very seriously in the best sense of the word. And he's a wonderful friend, and he and I have had amazing experiences around the world, and I hope we'll get to a few of them tonight. Okay.
Yes, definitely. I'm eager to hear them. I've met Chris once before in New York when we were there with one of our students, and it was a treat to meet him. And something that I really remember is his playfulness, right? He's eager to play. He's always looking for stuff to play around, and that vibe is just so positive and so contagious. And,
yeah.
And that's very good to have when you're performing for refugees or in the slums, right? When you say, Tom, that adds something to the performance.
Absolutely. I like to say we share a bit of love, laughter, magic, and hope. And Chris is, when I think of him as playful, I think of him as seriously playful or playfully serious. He's not superficial and yet he makes people laugh very deeply, and his humor is very powerful and profound. So I'm looking forward to it. It's almost a tease. It's like he's there in the wings. I want him to come on stage here.
Yeah, me too. So,
do you have any other questions, Carlos? No.
And yes, do you have a sense of when he or Janet are not present because they're the mimes, right? do you feel a difference on the Magicians Without Borders shows when Chris is there and to where he's not?
I think they're definitely richer, and it truly adds something, and it's truly a magic in itself. I mean, Chris also does magic, but he doesn't have to, because he creates illusions all the time with his body and with his face and his interactions with people. But it adds a wonderful element to our performing together. And I love performing together with him. I'll do a little magic, he'll do mime, I'll do magic. We'll do some things together. It's really, really fun.
Awesome. Yes. So let's introduce him with a video, because I think this video is awesome. So let's introduce him with this. Here we go. Awesome. Yes. And now, well, with
that video.
Further, let me just try and get this set up before he joins. Yes. Without further ado, let's welcome Chris Yerlig, Mime. Hey, Chris. How are you?
Hi. How are you? Good to see you again. Oh. It's good to see you, Kaya.
What? Chris.
Oh, that's much better.
Oh, yeah.
It actually helps when you're doing mime, because you have to not talk for quite a while.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
Yes, Happy New Year to you. Feliz Año Nuevo.
Feliz Año Nuevo. Sí.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to see you guys. Tom, thank you for your introduction. It's always a joy to work with you. I get to do my show, which I like to do, and you do your show, and we take it in turns. And I've seen your show 50 times. I never tire of it. I just captivated the whole time. It's a double joy working with you, and whatever you set up, you're just a wonderful gentleman, and you've created a lot of magic within the magic all over the place. So thank you.
Well, I feel the same way. It's really, I love performing. I'm not so good. I've gotten better with kind of sharing this stage and moving back and forth. LaFleur, my wife, who you created in many ways, the monster that you created,
Right.
He's taught me to work with, because 20 years I just performed by myself, and working with another person was something I had to learn. When that was another one of the million things I learned with Magicians Without Borders. But performing with you, I just feel so proud of and honored. So it's great.
It's mutual.
We even one time did 7 shows together in one.
We did. There was one time in India, we were in Ahmednagar, and yeah, when people want a show, you have to show up if there's time. So we traveled all over the town, and it was getting dark by the middle of the 7th show.
Oh, right. You were busy rigging up lighting so people could see.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was difficult, but yeah, it's what we do. Keep making as many people laugh as we can in a given day.
Wasn't that the day we were driven around in a hearse? Was it
I don't remember.
Ambulance or something? Or it was some weird vehicle, as I recall. I
was an ambulance, maybe.
I think it was an ambulance.
Which we kind of needed at the end of the day.
They took us directly from the 7th show to the hospital.
Directly. We've got a photograph of that day, actually, Carlos. If I don't know if you can find it, but it should say show with Tom. There's a little girl who's holding a magic bag. And I don't know if you can find that, but that would illustrate. Tom and I were on this stage, which was really high up, and we were completely surrounded by people.
Oh my God, you
remember that? It was just a delightful show. And then they didn't leave, so they were banging on the car. There
it is.
I do a change bag magic trick, and I get a volunteer to come up, and she had the most smiley face in India. So I picked her, and she's wearing the bag because there's a hole.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that those shows were very full of energy, and even though when we're performing, we may feel that we're tired, but when you got a volunteer, you get a volunteer that's lively, like she seems, and like you're saying, it just it powers you up, right?
Yeah. It was wonderful. Yes, it was sort of towards the end of the day because it was starting to get dark, and we had to keep our energy up. And the interesting thing is, it's a very poor neighborhood. So once the show was going, and as we were leaving, people were hoping to kind of cash in on some of those bags and boxes and tricks. So we had to sort of pile into the car really quickly.
What you just said, Carlos, about I don't actually remember how I was feeling before the shows, but toward the end. But even if you're exhausted, or often, an example was about 5 years ago, I had a terrible automobile accident, and my leg was in tremendous pain. I had a big operation, and I would go over to the Adirondacks, and I had to drive for 2 hours, and I would get out of the car, and I just could barely stand on my leg. I couldn't walk. And I went in, I started setting up the show, and I said, how am I possibly going to do this show? And I started the show, and 50 minutes later, the show was over, and I had no recollection of any pain whatsoever.
You're like, of course. Yeah, that's awesome.
I was just focused on the audience, Yeah. Go ahead, Chris. You were going to say
I have a story just like that. I got chikungunya a few years ago when chikungunya was doing the rounds. In Haiti, working in an orphanage, and when I got home, I didn't feel very well, and it's very, very painful for a week. You can't do anything, and then it does last many months. I had a whole summer of performances to do. I had to drive a 12-hour drive, and every minute I was thinking, how am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to be able to do this? And I was in agony. And then I had to go and do 3 shows a night. And I was just like, how am I going to do this? But strangely enough, they were really good shows because I was really present and grateful for every extra minute. And I got through it. I have no idea how I did. I mean, it was so difficult to just open a door or hold the steering wheel.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Magic.
Yeah, the shows get us in the mood and makes us forget any
It does.
any
And that's probably what it's doing for the people watching too. You know, they forget their troubles for a little while.
Yeah, completely. They're transported, as you know. I'm sure we've felt many times. And well, Chris, you do a lot of things, right? So you do mime. You're a great mime. You also do yeah, you do a bunch of things. But tell us, how do you get into performance? Like, how do you get into mime?
Well, that costume. I was 6 years old, and it was for a competition, a costume competition, and my mother made that outfit, and I guess she must have set the stage, and I won the I won the competition. It's funny. The next year, I went back as a witch, and the judge thought I was a girl. I was into dressing up, I guess.
Yeah.
But I really didn't do very much with it until I got to college, and there was a charity event, and I thought I would dress up as a robot and try to do it, for this event. And there's a picture of me in my bright blue outfit somewhere there, Carlos. There we go. So that's my very, very first show for a coffee evening. And there I am. I learned a few maneuvers, and that's me drinking, and that's blue dye, food dye in my hair, and talcum powder on my face. And I didn't know what I was doing, but you gotta just fake it till you make it, right?
It's great you have that picture.
Awesome.
I just found that today. That was like part of the archaeology.
Very good, robot. But when was this robot at?
So that was 1984, and I was in college in England, the University of West of England, and that was kind of like an open mic night.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so
And
cool.
you're still a robot now and then.
I still do the robot as part of my act. So with Tom and for Magicians Without Borders, and also working in libraries, I have a show that's some mime and some magic. The robot features in that show, as well as those appearing red balls, and so that's it's interesting. You've got that picture there. That's where I started doing the robot, and then when I was traveling in France and Spain, and I needed to make some money, that's me in Salamanca, España. And that's me in the Plaza Mayor with my best friend, actually. But the people would come up and they put money, like Andy's doing there. I was wearing a milk container on a belt that I covered with silver foil. People would put money in, and then I would move. So that was my first. That month there was my first professional.
And do you remember how it felt when you got your first positive reaction to your performances? Do you remember that feeling of saying, "Hey, this is working"?
Well, the first time I did that, it was in France, and in the south of France, and I went out on the street and I put my hat down and had my glasses, and I had some music. I like dance. I like movement. So that was satisfying. But then people came up and put money in my hat, and I had enough for like a sandwich or something after a very short amount of time. And then, if something makes you money, you keep doing it, right?
I agree. Definitely.
But back then, I had no idea that I would be on my way to the USA, where I would be living for 30 years plus now, and meeting Tom Actually, we met in the early 90s at a fair in Vermont. We sort of saw each other a little bit. And then much later on down the line, I was invited and delighted to accompany Tom and Janet to El Salvador.
Oh, yes, we would definitely get into that. I just wanted to say where, I mean, you know, lots of things, right? You know, Mime is
okay. Yeah, so I was doing the robot.
How do you call this in English? Balloon figures. Yeah.
Balloon thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
How do you do it?
I was performing in the street in San Francisco, and robots Mime wasn't making any money, but the balloon guys, the clowns making balloons, were making money. And so I learned how to do some, and I started doubling my income. When I went back to New York City, I became a birthday party clown. So I'd learned some magic and some balloons and the robot, of course. And I dressed up in a bright outfit. And that's how I started to develop a show. So it was in New York City in the late 80s, early 90s.
Great.
Before that, you were only busking on the street. You didn't have a full show.
Well, on the street, I either did the robot or I did balloons. And sometimes later on, I did add magic and have a full show on the street. But I would do a combination of birthday parties and street performing. And maybe it would be like, oh, at this time of day or this season, balloons would be better. And then maybe I go to Little Italy at night and do the robot or something. But I don't do any street work anymore.
Of course. And when do you start doing like what we call, social performances or volunteer work? Or shows that are not for an audience that is, either in the street or in a fair, but somebody that usually does not get entertainment, or that entertainment, helps them in different ways with their current situation.
Yeah. Well, that happened in 1995. I was a clown friend of mine, Rick Davis, the late and great Rick Davis, couldn't make it on a trip to the Dominican Republic. So he suggested me to Project Troubadour, that is very like Magicians Without Borders, traveling around, performing for people, sometimes doing some workshops. And so I went to the Dominican Republic with them, and there was a group of us doing theater and music. There were some musicians with us too. So that got me started, and really I got the bug for traveling and performing, volunteering, and going overseas. The picture that we just saw was the next year. So that was in 1996 or 7, I think. That was in Puerto Rico with Cirque Mundial. So I was a clown with tomfoolery there. We were aguacate y tomate. I was aguacate. And, well, we did a double act in the ring, in the circus ring, but I was also made the clown director. So I put together those outfits, and we went to hospitals and disabled centers and old people's homes, and we were working with a big corporate sponsor that set these up. So I was talking on the phone to them every day. And we'd go out when we weren't doing shows with the circus. So that got me, even though I had a salary for that short time, it really gave me a taste for working up close with people from, all different walks of life and different abilities.
Awesome. Here we got a question, Chris. Well, you know Spanish, so can you read that and answer it?
De todas las cosas que hago, so all of the things that I do, ¿cuál es su favorita de hacer? What is your favorite thing to do? Yes. Oh, so many favorites. Tengo muchas cosas favoritas. Pues A mí me gusta el truco que hice antes. Oh. Me encanta hacer eso. Siempre siempre hay risas y sonrisas. So I love to do that. It gets laughs every time. I like that. And the robot. El robot también me gusta mucho hacer el robot. I love to do the robot.
Mm-hmm. So cool. Wonderful. So cool, Chris.
It's very hard to do with Zoom.
Yeah, but it works. It does work. It does work.
Sitting down also. It's amazing.
Yeah. Pretty cool. So do you remember where you were there?
So this is interesting. So I mentioned the Dominican Republic. I don't have a picture of when I went with the group, but this is in the Dominican Republic quite a few years later. So this is going to be somewhere between 2006 and 2015, somewhere. I don't remember. So this is in a community near Barahona in the west of La República Dominicana, and I was actually part of a team helping to build a school for deaf children. While I was there, I did a little street show.
That's so cool.
And that thing in the mouth. So I'm doing the robot there. That thing in the mouth has a little. It's in the shape of yellow lips. It's absurd.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So I'm shaking her hand,
Somebody, excuse me just a second. Somebody just walked in here who wants to say hello. She can't stay long, but she wants to.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Janet.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
I'm going to go tune in. Can I tune
okay,
in downstairs?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Yeah, so I can hear what you guys are talking about. Hi, Carlos.
Hi, Janet. So good to see you. Happy New Year.
You because we worked together so you could create a mime character to work with Tom.
Right?
And,
are you telling them?
We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, that he created this monster called La Fleur.
The world-renowned La Fleur.
Okay.
Okay, I will get out of your way here.
All right.
Janet. That's so cool. So you've got, you've gotten to travel also with.
This is in Haiti. This is in the very, very near, actually, to the Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic and Haiti share the same island, the island of Hispaniola. And this is a refugee camp where the Dominican Republic decided that it didn't want to have a lot of Haitian people living in the Dominican Republic. They've come there as migrant workers, and a lot have stayed and have families. And so they pushed out a lot of people into this refugee camp right on the border in the west of the Dominican Republic. It's on the other side. It's on the Haitian side, so it's in the east of Haiti. And in 2015, I can't remember the date, I got to take two other clowns down to Haiti with Clowns Without Borders. And this was a fun little show for the little darlings. So that's Alex and Clay. Alex and Clay are professional clowns and performers. So, and Haiti, this was sponsored. So this is also with Clowns Without Borders that same year. Camilla That's Camilla in the photograph there, and Naomi from Clowns Without Borders. Camilla's from Clowns Without Borders, Sweden, and Naomi, who's the director of Clowns Without Borders now. We all went down to Haiti again. I went back to Haiti, and they came along too. So this was just a photo with some people in the street.
That's so cool. Those trips are so cool, and I want to get to when you got in touch with Magicians Without Borders, right? So Janet just walked in and said, we said, that you helped create her character, and I want you to take us to that moment. To when did you hear about Magicians Without Borders? What was your take on it? And how did it come about that you ended up right there where you're in the picture, like in Janet's studio, teaching her?
So Tom and Janet reached out to me to come up and do some workshops with her. And here, this is the floating suitcase, making it appear that the suitcase is stuck in the air. And that's kind of like a signature of mine, and also of La Fleur, which is Janet's character. And the thing is that I didn't really know much about Magicians Without Borders and in all of the things that it does and everywhere that it's been. But if you just say Magicians Without Borders, I know exactly what that is, because I was working with Project Troubadour, and Clowns Without Borders, there's Soccer Without Borders, there's so many without borders, and it's about reaching out across the world and doing good things. So when they said come down and help and share your craft, of course, absolutely. And I love these guys, so what's not to like? It was definitely, it was a lot of fun, and we did it. I think we did it once, and then I came back later, and then they went traveling, and then at some point I got to go with you, right, to El Salvador.
Was the first trip El Salvador, right?
It was, and with Janet, although I can't remember. Was Janet doing La Fleur in El Salvador when we went? I can't remember. Or did it happen after?
I don't know. I can't remember her and you being together in El Salvador. Maybe, were you?
We were, but she wasn't performing. So maybe we went to El Salvador, and that was after that you said, "Oh, why don't you teach Janet?"
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened. But can you talk a little bit about your experience at what I apparently coined the word campamento? Apparently kind of a silly word in Spanish, but it was like a short camp.
Well, so that was to El Salvador. That was the first trip. We flew into San Salvador, and then the next day we traveled up to Santa Ana, and then there was a school bus that took us on a trip out to the countryside, and it was lovely to go out of the countryside, and these kids are living in the city there, and it's nice for them to have a break and go into the countryside, and I got to be part of this team, which I love to do. I do a lot of solo work, so whenever I get to work with a team, Tom was teaching magic, Janet was teaching art, drawing, and painting, and Soccer Without Borders were there, and so they led soccer programs, and Andy Pike. I met Andy Pike for the first time.
Oh my goodness! Right,
the late and great Andy Pike, and he is a magician, or was a magician. Sadly, he's passed away, and he was teaching mentalism, being able to predict what card someone had picked. And
he did fire eating and
oh, that's right. Yeah.
And some poi. Did he do poi also?
I
He definitely did some fire breathing and
yeah, but a very interesting fellow. And actually, I went to visit him. He lived in Los Angeles, and I went to visit him a couple of times. And he and I took a trip up to Las Vegas, and we went to a camp run by Jeff McBride and Spinner. So we stayed in the desert in tents, and then Jeff invited me to open for him at the Wonderground. So and Andy Pike was doing some table magic as well, and so you just never know what doors are going to open when you collaborate with other artists and with artistic organizations. So that was a little aside there, but it's good to mention Andy because he was such a great guy.
Yeah.
Oh yes. And
so anyway, so what was really wonderful about the Campamento is that these kids had some opportunities to be creative, and this is great. We're going to come right to that in just a second. So the children learn these different disciplines. I taught mime class, and if there was a performing art like magic or mime, then there was a performance at the end of the 3 or 4 days, and that was fun. I got to do my show, so people got to see it too, which was great. But the kids learn, when you learn mime, you learn how to communicate with your body without saying anything, and it gets you to be aware of what you're doing, so that when you're performing, say with magic, you can be more demonstrative, more clear, and know like where you're looking. It brings awareness, because you have to, when you're performing mime, everything that you do speaks and telegraphs. So it's a good skill for anybody in the performing arts. And the kids took right to it, and it was a lot of fun. The photo that we just saw, a couple of the young people, this is Maricela and Astrid. They came with us to Guatemala. So a trip was organized to Guatemala, taking along these students of magic. Maybe you were also in the mime class. And they got to do shows there. Tom, did you want to say anything more about how?
I just saw myself way in the background there. There's America. Oh my God, look at all those people. And that's Luis, our host in the red jacket.
So he's from Soleil, or
he's from Soleil, yeah.
Soleil, yeah.
Do you remember why that trip happened, or do you want to share how that happened? Because you were, doing these campamentos, right? And I just want to touch on something that Chris said, and it's the importance of performers, any kind of performers, but in particular magic performers, to have some other tools so that when they perform, they can do something different, that it's not just the repetition of how the trick works, right? Because that happens a lot. You learn the steps on how to do a trick, and then you just mechanically do it, right? You have to, you put your hand like this, and then put the handkerchief inside, and then you just show it's empty, but that's it, right? And you learn the mechanics of the trick, but not how to communicate with your whole body. And I guess that's something that most performers don't do early in their career, but they should, right? They should get exposed and also get many tools from in many other performance arts, and that just enriches. Is that a word in English?
Yeah, sure. Good word.
Enriches the one's performance, and that's just wonderful to see.
Can I speak to that a minute? Because what's really important about any performance is the story, some kind of a story. Like anybody can juggle 3 balls, well, if you're juggling three balls, you know, after you've done it a few times, there's not, you know, it's boring. But if there's some kind of a story or some comedy that goes with it, and the same with magic, and Tom tells stories and creates an adventure that he talks about as he's doing his tricks. And I don't speak, so I'll create a story like relationships, communicating with people, or things that aren't there.
But talking about relationship with your body or a spectator or somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
We talked about on an earlier conversation how important it was for me. It wasn't exactly learning mime, but when I started finding myself in Sudan, where 98% of the people in my audience didn't speak English. And as you said, I rely a lot when I perform in the States on verbal stuff and stories and talking and making whatever. I had to develop my physical being, you know, as a kind of mime. You know, I had to say a lot with my body because I couldn't rely on words. And it helped me so much when I came back and was performing here. I know it changed me, you know. So
that's a cool story.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
You had to survive. You had to invent a way to communicate.
Yeah.
Without any language except ooh.
Right. It also helped me to really slow down. You know, and emphasize moments, you know, but I wanted to say something. Could you put that photograph back up again from Guatemala? So Luis in the red there, he came to Campamento and he taught some creative writing courses. And we really loved him and he loved us. And he invited us back to Solo La. And he set up some shows for us there. And I thought it was just really wonderful for the kids to leave El Salvador and take a journey on a bus for 5 or 6 hours to Guatemala and to perform, you know. And I thought the magic was really what the trip was about. And on the way back, I asked Maricela, what was the trip like for you? And she said something amazing. She said, I never knew I was a Salvadoran until I went to, she had never left Santa Ana, you know, for the 12 or 13, 14 years of her life at that point. She had never left her little, you know, town, and let alone left El Salvador. And she said the people speak differently, they look different, they regarded me differently. I was really interesting to them because I was from El Salvador, and the horizon of her world got so much bigger by going to that place. But being kind of a stupid gringo North American, I thought, well, you know, El Salvador, Guatemala, Costa Rica, they're all the same, you know.
They're all the same.
But when she said, I'm embarrassed to say that. I'm sorry. I'm saying that. But she let me know that she found out something unique about herself, and she was regarded by the Guatemalans in a special way. That's one of the things I remember from that trip.
Oh, great story, and yes, I think that's also take for granted that we, all of our cultures are very different, and we don't know them. We don't know the difference from them. And when we go and get and travel, it's surprising how different they are, but still there's some underlying thing that's very common, where we share stuff that we didn't know we share.
Yeah.
Right? For example, food for me is such a wonderful thing, because we all have some base of the same food, but then we do it so differently. So in Colombia we have arepas, but in Mexico they have tortillas, but in Honduras they have baleadas, but in El Salvador they have pupusas, right? So but they're similar, they're very similar, they're not the same, but they're very similar. So that's, I don't know, it's something that's pretty cool to experience, and I'm so glad that we got those kids to experience Guatemala as well.
But what you did, Carlos, like a number of years back, that incredible miracle of bringing, how many? 8? Were there 8 kids? 6 kids from the poorest ghetto in Colombia to New York City for 10 days, and just exploded their world. It was amazing what you did.
I remember one quick story, that before we met Chris on the second trip to New York, I was with Tamara, one of our students. I don't know if you remember this, Tom, but we I don't know what we were doing, but we had to have something to eat, and we saw this cool cafe. I guess it was right before we came down from the High Line, and we went into that cafe. It was a very fancy ass cafe. It was so fancy, and everyone was dressed up, and we're just tourists, like, let's just sit here. And I remember looking at the menu, everything very, very expensive, right? And those things, like combinations, very weird. And the only thing they had to drink was like a sparkly cucumber lemonade or something like that. And Tamara was like, "What? Cucumber lemonade?" And we're like, "Let's try it." And they bring out this sparkly water with a cucumber inside, and Tamara is like, "Why would somebody put a cucumber inside?" And charges and charges $15 for it.
They went back to Colombia thinking that's what people drink in America, and that's how much it costs.
Oh God, yeah, that was just. Those experiences are wonderful to have, and I'm very grateful that Magicians Without Borders gives us that opportunity. Chris, I just wanted to ask you, where else do you travel with Magicians Without Borders after El Salvador?
For about 9 years now, I think it is. Tom invited me to go to India. I can't remember if we went with Janet the first time, but India is the other place, and this group of young ladies are in a shelter. They're protected, and it's like an orphanage. And we went on to Priyanka on the left there. She's a senior of this home, and she's graduated now and is married and lives outside. But she comes back and teaches these young ladies. So Tom introduced me to this place, Prerana, and sometimes we go together, and sometimes I've gone on my own. Priyanka and I went shopping, and we picked up some appearing canes and those masks and change bags, a bunch of magic equipment. And because these ladies are under protection, they can't be photographed, but in the masks, it's fine. So it's also very, very cool.
So
it's a delight to work with them. They have a magic club that Tom created, and every time he goes to India, he goes and does a lesson with them, and me too. And so Priyanka learned for years and then graduated from the institution, and now she goes back as a teacher, and is training the young ladies, and maybe the most able of them might become, the teacher one day.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting, just remembered, is in El Salvador, when Peter and Maricela and Astrid and Jaime and some of the others started a magic club, they called it Magic Power.
Power, yes.
And when Priyanka and the young women were coming up with a name, they came up with the name Jadui Shakti, which means magic power. In Hindi, Shakti is power. And I just thought that was so interesting and so lets me know what the teaching of them is about. We say the mission of Magicians Without Borders is to entertain, educate, and empower. And both of these groups, when they named themselves, we didn't tell them to do that, but they felt power by doing the magic.
That's an interesting coincidence. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty cool that it leads to empowerment. And
yeah.
They feel it. They
never heard me say the mission of Magicians Without Borders was to educate and empower, but they did know.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's the materialization of it.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
What were you saying, Carlos? I'm sorry.
Oh, just that was the materialization of the work. Like it just materialized on empowerment, and they needed to express it as power. So
yeah.
Some of them start out very shy, and they don't want to get up, but then they see their peers getting up there, and poco a poco, little by little, they increase their confidence, and they all love to get up and do stuff now. And it's just wonderful. It's so wonderful. And it's possibly the most fulfilling aspect of all this work is the mentorship. And so Priyanka, who we saw in that photograph, who's the senior magician, she and I got to go and do shows together where I would sort of create the atmosphere. I would start out and warm people up, and then we'd take it in turns to do a trick or a piece of comedy or something. She would do her tricks in between what I did, and it was so fulfilling. I like performing, but I'm happy to get out the way and let someone else do it, who is learning and gaining in power, strength, and confidence. And it's so fulfilling. I'd like to do that all the time.
That's so cool. Is that the video that we have? Can we show that video?
So the video is, okay, yes, we've got it. So that's Priyanka. We were in a hospital. So all of those children there are not well, in a hospital in Mumbai, in the west of India. And so our friends there, we're friends with this group called Our Children, set up a show for us, and we were joined by a professional juggler. So Ami is an amazing juggler, and she already does shows, but she does it in small groups, and so she's learning a lot of performance techniques. So going with both of them into a hospital to make the kids laugh and for these young women to learn performance skills was just fantastic. And now we get to see them entertaining the audience and us.
You'll see Ami do something. She's a very interesting woman, especially in India. She's a bartender, and you'll see her juggling bottles, and she does that behind the bar. And she's done ads for Absolute and some of the really big companies in the world. Anyhow, let's see it. She's an amazing juggler and a wonderful woman. Great person.
Here we go. Here's the video. Wonderful, wonderful to see that. Bianca performer with Sammy.
So I was filming that, and then when they were done, I did a trick or something like that, and we went around to a lot of different places with people with different disabilities, and it's wonderful. We get on the train and go to another part of the city, and in this work, we meet so many other artists. They might come to one of the camps that we run, just like in El Salvador, there were different artists came from all over, from different countries. And we make new friends, and sometimes we get to perform together. So it happens a lot.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, we're coming to the end of this episode. Tom, any other story you want to share with Chris, or any other question you want to ask him before we leave?
I'm just curious, that question you love to ask, Carlos. You know, how has this kind of work, using your art in this kind of way, Chris, changed you? You know, as a human being, I guess.
It's changed me a great deal. It's very hard to put it into words, but I think that through this work, I've discovered what I like to do and what I get to combine. My love of performing, making people laugh, making a difference, whether it's mentoring or helping people that are sick feel better for a moment, you know. I think that it's changed me because it's something that it's just very gratifying to be a part of. Usually, I've done a lot of solo performing, and I like working as a team, and I like making a difference. And sometimes I get to speak other languages, so you know, it changes me. It's changed me in that working with Magicians Without Borders and the other teams that are similar, but I've mostly worked with MWB. Has enabled me to explore and give and receive and be a bigger person and explore more of my humanity. At the same time, it appears that, you know, everybody else that's involved gets to do that too.
Yeah, I think of you as a person without borders in some ways. I feel like you're a global citizen, and some of that maybe comes from being an immigrant and not living in your home. So you're in this strange world, other world, not the one you grew up in. But you've traveled so much and you connect so deeply with all of the cultures in some ways. And I really do think of you as not British or American, but really as an earthling,
Mhm.
as a global citizen.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like a world citizen, and yes, I emerged on the planet in England, but my father taught me to speak, to count up to 10 in a bunch of different languages, and I liked it. And then I went to France a lot, so I've been moving around, and it's such a joy connecting with people and learning how to connect with people.
And it's always struck me as odd that you are this master linguist and mime.
Well, okay, so it's interesting. So there's something about imitation there. So with mime, like you're pretending, you're imitating something, like pretending there's a glass wall there. Imitating, but it's also like copying people that we saw in the first movie, walking behind and doing what they do. There's this mimicry, this imitation. So with language, it's similar. So you say something, and then I can like copy it, and so I guess it's an imitation skill.
And so much of learning a language is that, and you're also not afraid to make a fool of yourself, which you do professionally.
Professionally, it's cool. So yes, I don't mind messing up when I'm trying to say something in another language.
Yeah,
pretty interesting.
We better turn it over to Carlos here.
Yeah, we could just keep talking for hours. I really hope that this is the first of many visits that we get from you, Chris. I feel that. Yeah, I feel that your work it's inspiring. It's breathtaking. It looks kind of simple, but we know it's not. So that's making it look simple. It's hard to do, and I think that talks a lot about your work, because you make it look so simple, so easy, so effortless, and we know how much work it goes into it. But I think it's wonderful. And I also think that you're as I said, a playful individual, and I love that about you. Like, we need more people that are playful and that are willing to play. So thank you for being playful and bringing play to the world.
Well, thank you, Carlos. It's a delight to be here, and great to be with you as well, Tom. And please, if people want to know, I'd love to, if any way I can help or serve or contribute, please let me know. I'll try my best.
I look forward to us traveling again when that's possible.
Oh, yes. I can't wait.
Yeah.
None of us can. We all can't wait to be able to move around a little bit more.
Boy,
Oh, yes. With that hope, we come to the end of the show. So, Chris, if anybody wants to know a little bit more about Chris, please go to mimealot.com. You can find everything that Chris does over there. And, well, thank you so much for being here, Chris. Tom, thank you for being here. See you in the next conversation.
Hasta luego.
Hasta
la vista.
Hasta la vista. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.